Well, I'll be honest with you, the Matt Walsh stuff, it didn't really bother me, but it did, you know, religious people like that is why I went on my atheist journey. And so I was a Christian my whole life. I used to go to my mom still goes to church 7 days a week. I used to go to church with my mom all the time. But I used to run into people like him often. And so for me, it made me just get turned off by the church, and then in turn kind of go on a spiritual journey. I was looking into Buddhism, I was looking into Islam, which was extremely far-fetched for me. Um, and then I landed on atheism because I just never felt comfortable on that side. But I will say besides that, um, when I showed up at the RNC, there was a lot of white men in suits. And so I can understand why maybe a person of color or somebody that comes from the left would be intimidated by that, because that's maybe not necessarily the norm that we're used to being around. But after I did that speech, Candace, I spoke to so many people, or they were coming up to me telling me their stories, right? And these are guys that look like they come from generational wealth.
Mhm.
And they're like, "Oh no, I came from nothing. I just worked my way up and I figured it out." Or one of the other guys was like, "My dad's in prison for murder." I mean, you would think this guy was like had a billionaire daddy. He was like, "No, my dad's in prison for murder. Um, my sister died of fentanyl poisoning. My brother died in the opioid crisis." And so it just, I still had that remnants left of the left in my head, where I have to admit, when I walked in there, I'm like, "Oh my God, they're gonna hate me," or they're from a different world. And when I started talking to them, I'm like, we're actually all going through the same thing in America right now. And you can't just judge a book by its cover, because I don't want people to judge me. I'm actually a sweetheart. I'm not a crazy person or anything like that. But yeah, it was really sad. A lot of people are going through a lot, and thank you, for telling your stories, everyone at the RNC, and and sorry for your loss, because people lost a lot of people, um, to fentanyl mostly. So
And it's interesting that you say that because one of the things I always say to my cousin, she does my hair, and we talk about this a lot. I'm like, if only people in the hood knew that the rednecks to them are the exact same people.
yeah, for
They're the
sure.
exact same people,
Yeah.
and yet the media will have you thinking like, oh, the rednecks hate black people. And like I'm like, it
Yeah.
is actually as soon as you get around them, I'm like they're exactly the same people flipped. And some of the best people I've ever met, actually, I will say the best people I ever met are just from down here in the South because they have the right values, like they family and faith, and faith is a big component of it. And I know what you mean when you say that you feel, and it makes me sad to hear that because I've heard it many times that Christians can be really judgmental, or
Mhm.
if you felt that, because the reality is that there were so many other Christians who were not saying that. And I messaged Matt immediately because I actually know Matt Walsh very well. I've worked with him for years. He's actually an amazing person. And I just felt that,
I was actually following him on Instagram,
were you?
and I unfollowed him after I saw that tweet.
See, I
I didn't
feel
know
like
much about
I
him, but
want
I
to get
saw
you
other
guys.
people following him, so
Mm.
I was just trying to find a community of people, and I unfollowed him. I'm like, "Oh, I guess he doesn't like me." So